I hope I'm at Madrid's level. That is what Kylian Mbappe had to say in front of the 80,000 crowd that turned up at the Santiago Bernabeu to welcome their latest Galactico as we welcome in. Sid Lowe joins us from Nedum. Obviously, comparisons are being made, Sid, to the thousands that turned up for Cristiano Ronaldo, and now, of course, the same sort of turnout for Kylian Mbappe. But what's interesting is that Mbappe is coming into a very different team with very different standards to the one that Cristiano Ronaldo joined, considering what Real Madrid did last season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's another way of looking at it as well, which is to say that, of course, Cristiano Ronaldo comes into a team that's looking for that 10th European Cup, that feels like it's been something that they're struggling to come to. They've just had a team under a different president. You've got a new president who's wanting to change everything at the club, Florentino Perez returning, having had his previous spell. And you get the feeling that this is a Real Madrid team that's not just not winning the European Cup, but not competing in Europe. This is a team that's going through that spell of not getting through that first knockout round. But I think there's another way of looking at it, which is to say that Mbappe comes into a Real Madrid team now, or a Real Madrid club now, that feels very different, not just to when Cristiano Ronaldo came, but to the way that it would have done had he come as recently as last year. Of course, last year it came off the back of Real Madrid being beaten really, really heavily by Manchester City. And I think at that point, it might have felt like Mbappe coming in was a necessity and like he was almost their saviour. I don't want to overplay that because, of course, we're still talking about a Real Madrid team that was performing pretty well for the most part, but they hadn't won the league, which Barcelona had won, and they've been beaten heavily by Manchester City. This time, only 12 months later, he comes into a team that wins the league very, very comfortably indeed, and comes into a team that's won the Champions League. Not comfortably, but has won it. And I think that changes the mindset and it changes the way that he sees it and it changes the way that others respond to him as well. And I think we see that in that phrase that you quoted, that idea of, well, I hope I'm at their level. I think a year ago, they might have been thinking, oof, we really hope this guy elevates us back to the kind of level that Real Madrid should be at.
Is this every movement going to be compared to that of Ronaldo? Every stat, every goal, every assist?
I mean, I think there will be an element of that. I don't think it will be quite as direct as that because I don't think he's exactly the same kind of player. I think we'll see him play him in a similar position, coming off the left, being a sort of a centre forward that plays wide or at least begins wide and ends up in the box. I think there are different personalities. I think the pursuit of him has been different to the pursuit of Cristiano Ronaldo. There's a real sense, of course, that this has taken 7 years to happen. And that wasn't really the case with Cristiano Ronaldo. In fact, the player that got talked about a lot back then was as much Kaká as it was Cristiano Ronaldo. So I don't think it will be quite as direct as that. But of course, the analysis of him will be the analysis of a player that we will expect to be the very best in the world. Now, a year on, he's got competition from two of his teammates, from Bellingham and Vinicius, and maybe one or two others as well, but certainly those two. So perhaps it's slightly different, again, as I say, than it would have been with Ronaldo and it would have been just a year ago. But I do think you're right to say that the analysis of him will be on the basis of this is the guy that's supposed to be the very best in the world. So if he's not beginning the season and scoring 2 or 3 goals in the first 3 or 4 games, he's not at 10 goals by sort of week 8, 9 or 10, that if he's not on 20, 25, maybe 30 goals by the end of the season, there will be a slight sense of, that wasn't quite what we were expecting.
At what stage will you have enough of being on Mbappe watch, Sid?
Well, do you know what? I'm quite excited, actually, in some ways, because for all of the way that it feels like we've spent a long time waiting for this, that this feels a bit overdue, and there's a little bit of you that when he turns up at Real Madrid, instead of kind of joining in the celebration, there's a little bit of you from a cynical point of view, sort of feels like saying, well, you took your time, and let's just get on with it, shall we? But actually, when you get to the next
Burley
point,
view,
which
Sid.
is him playing, he's still a brilliant footballer. Yeah. And he's still a footballer that I think is very exciting. And I think he's a footballer that will make Real Madrid even better. And truth be told, certainly from a Madrid perspective, I think when this was finally announced, now obviously we all thought it was coming, and so maybe you don't have that boom impact when it happens. But when it was finally announced, I think the initial gut reaction from most people, which will probably be tested now and probably won't be proven to be entirely true, was, my word, they're going to absolutely walk the league for the next 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, considering obviously what they achieved last season, Nedum, and what they're looking to do now with Kylian Mbappe in the squad, which is obviously quite a young squad as well. As a defender, where don't you want him?
I don't want him wearing the white shirt of Real Madrid playing anywhere at the Bernabeu. I'll be perfect.
Obviously, there's a debate about left, right, centre, where he plays. Where is he at his most dangerous, in your opinion?
I think the way that sort of Sid described it, or I think it was you said, coming from the left going inside is ultimately the most dangerous position in my mind. Because if we see him playing as a lone striker, I think that sort of 2v1 which he'll be up against, yes, he does have the ability to be able to get past anybody, but there's usually someone else that's going to be there. Whereas that ability to ghost into space and to create overloads with fullbacks and say with 10s, with people like Bellingham and Vinicius, then he'd become a lot more dangerous. Not least of all for the fact that, for the last few years, we've seen Madrid, yes, they can outplay you, but they can also hit you on the counter-attack. And I think when that counter-attack is coming from something that's a bit more wide, I think he'll definitely play into his strengths as such. So realistically, obviously, as one of the best players in the world, most defenders are going to struggle anyway. But I think when he has that sort of ability to affect the game in sort of different areas, whether it's from the left drifting in or from inside out to the left, I think that poses more of a problem, because we've seen those videos online where he drops a little fake shoulder to try and get behind, and defenders absolutely soil themselves with fear because they realise they're never going to be able to catch him. But that impact is more readily available, as I say, when he's out wide. So I think that would be the bigger danger.
Do you know what strikes me looking at that side, though, is like it looks super exciting, and it does, particularly up front. Although, that was a good partnership with Vinicius and Rodrigo.
Definitely. As the season went on as well, it
just got better and better.
Yeah.
And obviously, it was a 3-ball with Bellingham coming through the middle, making those runs. We'll see how that sort of balance works out. I mean, it should be fine. They're all world-class players. In fact, 3 of the best in the world in what they do. But then you look just slightly back, and that midfield has got energy and quality, but it hasn't got Luka Modric anymore. It didn't really have him last year, because he was on the bench the bulk of the time. But it did have Toni Kroos.
Yeah.
And that's gone. And that, in the bigger games, it is a big element of control. When all around is crumbling, Toni Kroos was the guy that just put his foot in the ball and picked the right pass and slowed the play down, and without being demonstrative about it, just calmed the whole middle of the park down and allowed, whether it be Tchouaméni, Camavinga, and particularly Fede Valverde, to go and work hard and make those runs. And as good as this looks in the Mbappe signing, I think that is still a question mark in terms of the middle of the park. If there are going to be some little weak points you could pick at when you're looking at, right, where are the rest going to look at and say, how can we, because we don't know what Barcelona are going to be like under Hansi Flick. We just don't. We don't know what Atleti are going to be like. Unlikely Girona will continue the season they had last year. So where can those little flaws come along? And it's not that they're not all quality players, they are. But in the last couple of years, the last 2 or 3 years, you've had Casemiro leave, you've had Luka Modric sit in the touchline, and you've had Toni Kroos basically control this midfield last year to winning the Champions League and the league. That's gone. So as exciting as that is up front, you can't forget that the midfield is really the hub of what this Real Madrid side is, and that has changed big time.
Of course, those vulnerabilities are something the other opposition will be looking to take advantage of in La Liga.